You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I am your host, Kathy Biasi, and I am an holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. On today's show, we are taking a look inside our first aid kit, exploring how commonly used acute care medications, salves, balms, and things like Band-Aids are homes for unwanted toxins and forever chemicals, why these products are counterintuitive to healing, and what to look for in products to replace these standards of care with healthy, truly healing products. And my guest in this discussion is Jodi Scott. With over 2 decades of experience and a background in health psychology and pre-med, Jodi's path has been a remarkable exploration of human health's boundaries. As the CEO and co-founder of Spry Life, Jodi, alongside her sister and mother, ignited a botanical revolution that birthed iconic brands like Green Goo First Aid and the groundbreaking Good Goo CBD line. Their commitment to plant-based product development powered by a unique extraction process, has made waves across the globe, from national pharmacies to Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore, and soon Australia. Holding a B Corp certification, Jodi passionately champions her company's commitment to social good and environmental impact, emphasizing her unwavering dedication to authenticity and efficacy in all of her endeavors. We talk about what a B Corp certified company is and why it's important for Jodi to hold this certification. This is something that a lot of people don't know about, what B Corp certified companies are, and it's well worth understanding, because once you get the concepts of how hard it is to hold a B Corp certification and the importance of it and how just environmentally forward this is, it really does make you look at companies differently who hold it. We talk about chemicals and toxins lurking in the first aid kit that we normally have in our medicine cabinet, and the evolution of therapeutic use of alternative medicine like psilocybin in the mental health space. A great show coming up for you. Please stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to speak with Jodi.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub, everybody. Today's interview has been recorded. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. Jodi, welcome to the show.
Great to be here with you, Kathy. Thank you.
You're doing some marvelous things within the health space, all of which we are going to get to. I think it's an important place to start with, with all of my guests, is how you arrived here. I know you had a strong military background and lots of other things that brought you to this space. So maybe you could introduce yourself to us that way.
Yeah. So my mom, sister, and we started Green Goo together. I was pre-med. My sister's an herbalist and a midwife, and my mom is a self-taught graphic designer. And I love
that's a match made in heaven, eh?
We're the trifecta. And the military component had such an influence on who we became today in so many ways, and how it impacted Green Goo. So, from my mom's perspective, we moved around every 3 months to 3 years, and she had to continue to reinvent her career. And this was really when computers were just starting to come out. And she identified that if I was, educated and informed in this tech space, I could actually make my job mobile. So she was my first computer teacher in the 3rd grade. I was like learning MS-DOS. But she just soaked it up and became a self-taught computer programmer, website developer, graphic designer. So, when we started looking at how we were going to bring Green Goo to market, it was seamless for us to, have that arm to it. On the flip side, again, we moved every 3 months to 3 years, and my mom loved plants and she loved to garden. But because we moved all the time, she didn't want to plant and then put the plants in the garden and then we couldn't take them with us. So she became like the master potted planter, like potted plants everywhere. And every move, we would be in the car with all of these potted plants, like hitting us in the face. And it's 3 kids, we're just like super annoyed because there's plants flying around all the time. But in conjunction to those plants and would be boxes of personal care products. And we're like, okay, Mom, we understand why the plants can't go in the moving truck, but like, why can't you put these personal care products? Like, and by the way, Mom, you've had these products for like 5 moves. I don't think you're ever going to use them. You should probably throw them away.
Well, I mean, to unpack after all those moves each time, you got to give her a little bit of space.
Right.
For that.
There you go. Exactly. And she's like, girls, we can't pack that stuff because it's flammable. The movers can't take anything that's flammable. And my sister and I were like, well, why would you put anything on your skin that's flammable? So we started talking about ingredients. And at that point, my sister and I became label reading junkies. Ingredients all of a sudden, and we were athletes and we recognized early the relationship of, your performance and sleep and food and diet and so forth. But that really was a critical shift for us in terms of reading labels. So, the combination of the plants that became such a part of our upbringing, which then we had and developed our own passion for plants, along with, the learning about toxic ingredients accidentally at a very young age before we were talking about, harmful ingredients, really set the tone for my sister and I's education. So I was a psychology, biology major. She was a biology major, pre-med, got my master's in health psychology, focused on psychoneuroimmunology and training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model. And the goal there was to help physicians look at the patient at more than just, I'm going to prescribe a medication to you. Instead, look at the patient as a more holistic approach for intervention, and what lifestyle changes could you help this patient make in order for these medications to have, an optimal impact for a solution. And, fast forward, now we call that integrative holistic medicine. And but it was very disruptive in the, traditional Western medicine aspect. And so at that same time, my sister was training or learning to be an herbalist. And that's when she started sharing with me these beautiful formulas and, how they could be alternatives to, your traditional antiseptics. And what I found really interesting at this time was, we're living very clean lives. We have clean personal care products. We have, organic foods that we're eating. And yet, if you opened up our first aid cabinet, all 3 of us were making the exception that there was no natural solution. We all were willing to bring these one-time use chemical laden products and non-sustainable packaging and just assume that this is what needed to happen.
Jodi,
And
when you're talking about, sorry, I just want to interrupt you.
Yeah,
First
please.
of all, what year are we talking about approximately?
About 2010.
2010. And when you open up your medicine kit, so your first aid kit, what are you specifically talking about? Like, are we talking about Band-Aids and things like that?
Well, I'll add Band-Aids to the list now too, but yes, We're talking about Neosporin, hydrocortisone, calamine, Band-Aids. We can talk about some of the forever chemicals that are in Band-Aids. And, 25% of the population has an allergy to neomycin, which is the active ingredient in Neosporin. And then we're seeing a lot of antibiotic resistance. Most of the products in the OTC space are petroleum paraben based, and they're really designed for acute skin conditions, meaning, use no more than 7 to 10 days max. And, if symptoms persist, you need to seek medical attention because, using these products over a longer period of time can cause toxicity. And most people are looking for, chronic skin conditions, solutions for chronic skin conditions. And the space really doesn't accommodate to that. And what was interesting is we found that we weren't alone either. The natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told that these are the only products that could get the job done. And then the conventional consumer was like, I really don't care what the ingredients are. I just want something that performs better. And they were just generally dissatisfied with the solutions that were available in the OTC first aid space. So for us, we thought, well, can we make a plant-based solution that is superior in efficacy? So we're meeting the needs of everyone, and bring sustainable packaging, a little bit of personality to this space, and give people solutions that actually work. And that's how Green Goo was born.
Interesting. I want to get into that. That's definitely a very interesting space. And to be perfectly frank, it's not something that I really thought too much about myself. You get a cut, you put stuff on it, you put a Band-Aid on it, you go. I guess it's the acuteness of those types of injuries that people don't spend the time to think about that. I think it's a very interesting way to look at our first aid kit. But before we get into things like that, I wanted to bring to everybody's attention that Jodi has a B Corp certified company. I don't think a lot of people know what that is, and I think it really to do your company its justice and honor, I think it would be great if you could tell us what that certification is and how hard it is to achieve it.
Thank you. So yes, a B Corp certification is just a wonderful way for the consumer to identify products that are looking at impact. And what I mean by that is it's an organization that has very strict, to your point, very strict certification processes to put a group of consumer, and not even necessarily consumer packaged goods. You can actually, there's now concerts who are B Corps, concert facilities, where basically they look under the hood of your company in every aspect. So how are you impacting the community? How is your organization structured internally in terms of giving equity to your employees, meaning, the person who's at the very top, your CEO, relative to the person who is packing the boxes, let's say. What is that disparity in wages? How are you building your organization internally to help them thrive and continue in their education? How are you sourcing? Are you looking at sustainability? For us, we make most of the ingredients ourselves. So we're bringing the plants to our manufacturing facility, taking them through a sustainable extraction process that's waterless, yield high amounts of these medicinal properties, and these custom oils are going in these products. So we're not bringing in a lot of these sneaky ingredients. And then, do you have sustainable packaging? What does your supply chain look like? Are you reducing your carbon emissions? Something that we're really proud of at Green Goo is we're not putting, a lot of products you'll see have fillers like water and other ingredients that make you feel like you're buying more, so you're getting bigger volume. But the reality is, that carbon footprint of transporting those products around the globe has a negative impact on our environment. So what I love about these salves, these balms, is they're in these tiny little, tins, aluminum being the #1 renewable resource, but then they're waterless and compact, and a little bit goes a long way. So you're reducing your carbon emissions. So as a B Corp, they come in and they look at everything, and then you get sort of a score. And it's very difficult to just meet the threshold to become a B Corp. Along with, they are reviewing you on an annual basis. And what I really love about the B Corp community is that when you go through the approval process, you learn how you can be more of a B Corp, meaning how can I lean in more with my team and, discover new opportunities for me to have a better, greater impact on them. Along with, oh, I didn't even think about these other ways that I could be involved in my community. Oh, I didn't even think about this is another way for me to, source more sustainable packaging. And so it's also a learning tool for you to have a greater impact on, the planet and the people. And so we were one of the first B Corps in the early days. We're starting to see, more companies, even on the NASDAQ, going through this rigorous process. And it's from a consumer standpoint, when you see that B Corp stamp on there, it's covering a lot of bases. You're not just buying organic, for example. You're looking under the hood and really looking at this company from a whole and how they can impact in a positive way.
And it's a relatively small community. I know that there are clothing companies, a couple, one actually, I only know of one that is B Corp. And I would imagine that would filter into a little bit of a higher price within the clothing community. I don't know how that parallels with your products, but if you are a conscientious buyer, this is a very, very, very good way to judge the company that you are working with. And I do think, and thank you for taking the time, because I think it really merits a conversation to talk about how much you have to put in to becoming this. And it shows a passion to what you're doing and a caring. So I think when you're a B Corp certified company, you already know right away, when as a consumer, that there's a lot going on with this company that you can be proud to be a client of. So I congratulate you for that. Now you have agricultural partnerships as well, or in tandem with being a B Corp company. I don't know if that's the proper terminology, that impact communities that you work with. Can you also speak to that?
Absolutely. So we used to grow these herbs ourselves. And then even do the extraction process ourselves, where we'd, sit outside in the moon cycle for 30 days as it slowly, extracted from these plants. And then obviously as we grew, we needed to continue to maintain that sustainability component. So when we look for farmers, we're looking for fair trade, organic ingredients, regenerative farming. That's an area where we're starting to see a lot more activity. When we formulate these products, we're looking for ingredients that are incredibly sustainable. We don't want to have ingredients that, it's going to require us to go and wreak havoc on the Amazon or the soil in order for us to scale. So a lot of these ingredients are just weeds. And really, the more you harvest them, the more they grow. They don't need a whole lot of water. So we also look for people who are growing these different plants and looking at how they can regenerate the planet and have a positive impact. And so those are some of the certifications that we can then share when we're going through, for example, our B Corp review and or, on the packaging, to ensure that you're getting really clean ingredients. And some plants, for example, like the hemp plant, this is really important because the hemp plant is a plant that can clean soil. But what you don't want is also to have that be the same version of that plant that's also in your product. So there's an art to the regenerative farming that then can clean soil and then also give you a clean ingredient that you can then, ingest and put on your body.
As far as we move ahead as technology and so forth, I find it's such an interesting concept that the more we push forward, the more we have to look back and to go back to the roots, to go back. Farmers knew this years ago. And for whatever reason, we've come away from it. So to go back and to start reevaluating and incorporating these processes, I think is a wonderful thing and a necessary thing. I guess as with everything, once you're pushed to the brink of something and a solution has to be made, it's made. And I think that it's so important. Plant-based is a word that's thrown around all the time. And it may not be true to what people think. It is actually, and in fact, a lot of us are maybe confused and maybe deceived by the word plant-based on a lot of the products. So again, I think it's such an important thing. Are plant-based products for the space that you're in, and let's just talk right now about the first aid space or the, what would you call it, skincare, or is that too broad of a term?
No, I mean, we call it topical therapeutics.
Topical therapeutics. Okay.
Yeah, which
So in
is
the
sort of a term that can cover both natural and conventional.
okay, so in the topical therapeutic space, are plants honestly as effective as medications that are created?
Absolutely. The process is very important. The herb is important, the plant, and how it's grown, how it's processed, and how it's brought to you. So to your point, we're bringing an old time process forward, and the Industrial Revolution didn't accommodate to this process by which what we're doing, which was very unique. It actually took we had like 10 or 12 manufacturers who just said, no, we're not doing this. And it took a manufacturer whose son had eczema. And he said, this is the first time my son has been able to use an over-the-counter product that is actually giving him results. I don't know how we're going to scale it, but we're going to scale it. And that's, our primary manufacturer to date. And that allows us to reduce a lot of these or not reduce entirely, 100%, us not using any of these man-made chemicals that are brought into these products that are very much a part of the Industrial Revolution. Now, unfortunately, to your point, yes, the plant-based renaissance is here. When I used to talk about plants with buyers, when I went to a buyer of a national pharmacy and I said, hey, I've got a plant-based topical antiseptic. And he just looked at me and was like, please,
We
like,
all do.
yeah, I'm like, go use this product. And, thank goodness, the results are the proof. But, fast forward to your point, we are at a place where now that, I mean, when I would use the word plant-based, nobody knew what that meant. Today, people know what that means. The unfortunate side of it is you're right. There's a lot of greenwashing and you can get plant-based water or what have you. And what does that mean? And, a lot of branding and making something look natural can insinuate that it's natural, and then you can have a lot of sneaky ingredients. For us specifically, the FDA is now taking a position and recognizing that plants do have active ingredients and do have medicinal properties. So they've been collating a lot of research that now allows us, so we at Green Goo are registered with the FDA as a topical homeopathic. And what that means is that we can reference certain herbs that the FDA recognizes as having active ingredients. Now, my sister, being an herbalist, would argue, for example, calendula, antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties, incredibly hydrating. We can only speak to calendula as being an antiseptic because this is the position where there's enough data that's available to support that statement. So what you'll see on the back of a Green Goo package is you're going to see the list of the active ingredients. Those are the plants, what we can call out based on what the FDA's position is, and then the rest of those ingredients go into the inactive. Now, what you'll find in the OTC space is you will see oftentimes the active ingredients, and they will not disclose the inactive ingredients. So you're also getting a lot of other ingredients that you may not be prepared to have on your body. Now, from a plant perspective, what's really fun about plant science is that plants, they work. They have a certain way of working on their own, and then how they work together is really fun. So, for example, Green Goo First Aid is that one particular product was designed to be a topical antiseptic. In the spirit of us wanting to be true to reducing your footprint, reducing the one-time use concept, we looked at the space and said, well, people are also looking for anti-itch. They're looking to take the sting out. They want to slow down the bleeding. So we made this your first aid kit in one little tin. And it has 13 herbs and essential oils in it. And what you'll find is, calendula flower obviously is, like I said, the antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial, but it also helps take the itch out. It improves wound healing. But you have something like yarrow and plantain. Plantain is kind of known as nature's Band-Aid, and yarrow has a way of, improving oxygen and blood flow. Well, you put those two together, yarrow and plantain, you see the improvement in the wound healing. And so it's really fun to see how these plants come together. Our dry skin formula, which is the pop product that Johns Hopkins has been using in their scleroderma and skin condition department for over a decade, which is wonderful for psoriasis and eczema. We bring in the yarrow, we bring in the calendula, but then we also have chamomile, red clover, elderflower, lavender, and all of these working together as an endocrine supporter, and then also being calming while we're increasing oxygen to the wound site and then offering anti-itch components. And so we're always looking at, obviously, for example, most you get a bug bite is not going to send you to the emergency room. But what's really nice is having that just around your home. Like you don't even realize that you needed it until it's there. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, here you go. Here's the tin. Here you go. Here's the green goo. And then kids can use it. I have pictures of my daughter behind my desk where she's as little as 1 year old with the tin of goo, sticking it on her bug bites. She had a wasp sting once and we were camping. And she knew immediately to go to the green goo and put it on her wasp sting, which most kids, they don't know that the sting is going to go away. And that's part of the Band-Aid ritual, right? You just get the Band-Aid to buy you some time because the child is feeling the pain that feels so overwhelming, which is going to be gone in, a minute maybe. And so it's fun to see the autonomy of these kiddos, like grab as she would say when she was little, the goo goo for her boo boo and put it on there. And Band-Aids, like we just briefly, discussed, they have the forever chemicals, the PFAs in the adhesive. And there's been some studies to show that, it's pretty pervasive across most Band-Aids. They're just starting to make some changes there. And that goes directly into the wound site. And then all of a sudden you're bringing in these forever chemicals that are, endocrine disruptors. They can have there's evidence to show that they're cancer causing. And to your point, you said earlier, they're just kind of acute things. Well, all those things build up. Like if you can have an opportunity to reduce your exposure to these phthalates and parabens and these man-made chemicals, and then save that stress for your body for when you really need it. Most physicians will tell you they love working on a healthy patient. So when you have that, serious condition moment that you need that intervention, your body's in better shape to deal with it.
It's it's been so pervasive as a child, and I'm not a child anymore. It was a Band-Aid, right? I mean, who would have thought? It's an amazing thing to actually pull apart our kit and realize, how we could be doing better. And you know what? Within integrative health, we're always talking about leveling up health and just doing the little things right to create a better you. We're going to take a quick break, everybody here. When we get back, let's pull apart what our first aid kit should look like.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub. My guest today is Jodi Scott from Green Goo. Jodi, let's take apart our medicine cabinet. But to preface all that, you talked a little bit about endocrine disruptors. And again, when you're someone who has been in the space a long time, sometimes, and I do the same thing, we talk about things that maybe other people don't understand. So when it comes to our medicine cabinet and the value of your products, can you let us in on a bit of the information about what endocrines are and what disruptors do and why you're hitting that area?
So, these endocrine disruptors challenge our immune system, our homeostasis, our body's ability to stay in a stable state, which then gives it more exposure to stress, illness, and so forth. And you'll find that, these man-made chemicals are probably the most prevalent endocrine disruptors in our environment. And, they've really only been around since the 1940s and 50s as a part of the Industrial Revolution. And these PFAs, which are the forever chemicals. And, it's not just the ingredients. Like we talk about looking at things that have clean ingredients or paraben or petroleum free or fragrance free, but phthalates is the number one produced endocrine disruptor, man-made chemical on the planet. And it is produced 1 billion pounds a year just in the US alone. And a lot of this comes from our packaging. So when you're looking at plastics and it leaching. So when you're looking at products, you want to consider not just the ingredients, but the packaging component. And the flip side of this is that, not only eliminating these endocrine disruptors, but then inviting adaptogens, inviting the things that actually help your body cope with stress and restore balance. That's an adaptogen. And they typically come from plants or mushrooms. And these are the things that are going to interact with your hypothalamus, your pituitary adrenals, your immune neuroendocrine system, and actually optimize it and give it what it needs to manage stress. And some of those ingredients could be like holy basil, reishi mushrooms, ashwagandha. And I'll give you an example. We were designing our deodorant and we recognized that the deodorant, or excuse me, your armpit is this really unique tissue, right? When you look at it, it's different. It has about a 70% absorption rate. And when you look at, we've been talking about aluminum in deodorant now, which is great, but there's a lot of other ingredients in deodorant, the PFAs, the phthalates that we should be concerned about. And so it's wonderful that we're talking about what not to put in our deodorant that is next to our lymphatic system, which then, especially for women and breast cancer, if you're having a 70% absorption rate. And so we always like to look at the inversion of what not just to avoid, but then what can we invite? And so in our deodorant, we do have adaptogens, the holy basil, the reishi mushrooms, the ashwagandha, but even like ginkgo biloba, echinacea, vitamin C, and different ingredients that will serve you and actually help. And what's so interesting is when you use these deodorants, the Green Goo ones that have the adaptogens and eliminate, the endocrine disruptors, your armpit changes. Like it changes, like the smell, the odor. It's not, you don't sweat as much. And so, arguably some of these chemicals that we've been putting under our armpit has been putting our armpit in like override mode, right? And it's probably, that may be contributing to a higher, odor rate and also the sweating. And then we just keep putting it on over and over. So it's interesting how you can see your body shift when you invite the things that, help it optimize while combining that with eliminating it with the ingredients that, stress it or cause, more challenges.
Would you say that we talk about the microbiome. The gut is the one that's, I guess, the most widely known. But, I often talk with my clients about the skin microbiome and the importance of the bacteria and the cultures that live on our skin that are important. Are your products cultivating that microbiome? Is there any sort of research into that space when you're developing your products?
There isn't. Now, I'll say the alternative, which is what we see in the topical antiseptics that are on the market, that there is, antibiotic resistance. That is not how our products operate, right? They're utilizing the systems that the body has in place and helping to stimulate the various components that then result in improved, wound care or, taking the itch or the sting out. But it'd be very interesting to explore that component to it. And I'll add to it, skin health. We always think of our skin as just, oh, it's just the largest organ. It protects everything, that's on the inside and that's it. And we're learning that there's so much more going on in our epidermis. And, even telomeres, for example, the end caps of our DNA that measure our longevity. In our epidermis, there's a large amount of the enzyme that can be stimulated to then regenerate our telomere length. And so perhaps we intuitively knew this when, you look at someone and their skin glows and you're like, oh, you look healthier. Like, and that's motivated sort of the personal care beauty space. But the unfortunate side is that we're bringing in, harmful ingredients to give a false sense of, health. And then, it could be damaging our body even more so than we know. And what I love about Green Goo, and it probably goes against capitalism in its truest sense, is that the more you use it, the less you need it because you're giving it the food for your skin. You're hydrating it. You're giving it the nutrients. Those oils are the carriers of all those like amazing plant properties and all those medicinal components along with that hydration, and your cellular, your cells change. And calendula, which is a prominent flower across all of our products, has been identified as a plant stem cell. And perhaps, and they're seeing evidence that it kickstarts that enzyme that then helps with your telomere regeneration. So I think we're only in the beginning stages of understanding how our skin may be more involved in our systemic and homeostasis of our overall health relative than to just thinking it stops with our skin.
I agree. There's too much of it on our body to be just a simple functional set of tissue. So I totally agree with that. Jodi, you graduated with your master's in psychology, and as you stated before, psychoneuroimmunology. Are you able to use any of your schooling within your products or in your business model?
Ironically, more so than I ever expected. For a while there, I thought, oh goodness, did I spend a lot on my education? Two things, from a manufacturing standpoint, I love organic chemistry. So my sister and I are a beautiful balance between her understanding the plant world at the level that she does, combining it with my organic chemistry knowledge to create these formulas for everyone through our manufacturing system. And so that has really served us well. In addition to, I love the relationship of mind-body health. So when my sister and I are formulating, and she's also an Ayurvedic practitioner, we're looking at the various essential oils, the smells that can then also combine that mind-body experience. So for example, in the dry skin formula, having the lavender in there, not only is it an antiseptic and helps with wound care, but it has a calming effect. And there's some really fascinating research that's been coming out over the last 5 years where like the Journal of Behavioral Medicine is looking at, can mindfulness actually improve wound healing? And they've been able to prove that it improves autoimmune skin conditions. They've seen that by reducing stress, you reduce your cortisol, which then improves your skin. And so I think like that we are only at the cusp again of understanding the mind and the skin, but I'm loving that there's more data to come that's coming out and research that's showing that relationship. And so when we formulate, we're bringing that into it. And, for example, we have Southern Butter, which is our sexual wellness brand. And we bring in various essential oils to either bring in an aphrodisiac or, for some people getting in the mood is they just need to calm down. They just need a stress reliever. For other people, they need a heightened sense of awareness. They need that stimulation. And there's different, herbs and essential oils in each of those that combine that mind-body relationship to have that impact. We also just designed a gratitude app that isn't quite optimized yet, but I'm really excited to weave that into our holistic skincare relationship with our customers so that we can practice mindfulness together on a regular basis, journaling gratitude, and then also having that be a part of, not only seeing the improvements in their skin and using these plant-based products, but also just having a happier and healthier life.
That sounds beautiful. You work with all sorts of plants. You work with mushrooms. Now, are you using at all your passion for psychology and mental health? Are you doing anything in that space?
So currently we're using just functional mushrooms in the Green Goo products. However, I have been working with a clinical trial out of Nova Scotia that was looking at treatment-resistant PTSD in our vets and using psilocybin as the alternative modality to help this particular population. And of course, me growing up in the military, it was not uncommon for me to hear about, treatment-resistant PTSD amongst my dad and his colleagues, and watching the integration of them coming back from deployments and some not doing as well as others. And unfortunately, suicide was something that was discussed at a young age for these soldiers coming home. And so I'm highly sensitive to, this particular area of research, and these results are extraordinary. I mean, after one macro dose, seeing an 80% remission rate. These people are coming in, obviously, with the PTSD, but there are so many tentacles to this, right? Their anxiety is through the roof. They're obese. They're overeating. They may be an alcoholic and consuming other drugs and alcohol excessively. They have no social life. They're afraid to leave their home. They don't have any hobbies. And what you see after this macrodose is not only, what would have taken potentially 10 years of therapy, which, sometimes you feel like it's 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. You not only see the results of them living or reducing their DSM, which is, the diagnostic manual that gives you sort of these criteria for meeting a PTSD diagnosis. But in conjunction with that, they are losing weight, eating healthier. They have a social life. They're going to concerts. They're reading books. They stop drinking alcohol. And so it's beautiful to see how this medicine can impact someone in a holistic way, in a way that we've never seen. And it's really prompted me to look at the psychedelic space from a different lens. And especially with the health psychology background and some of the challenges we've had, whether it's end of life or, chronic pain, phantom limb. Like we have not been able to crack the code on phantom limb. And here we're seeing, with a psychedelic intervention combined with, a therapeutic intervention, they're able to change that pain loop experience, and the phantom limb pain goes away. And we haven't been able to solve that. And so it's not only wonderful to see the results that could potentially be available for so many challenging communities, but it's also changing medicine in the sense of, how we would look, for example, at the pain loop and the mind experience and the opioid crisis. We're seeing the way the opioids had worked is we're pushing the pain down, and then it ends up coming back tenfold, while also, people are getting addicted to these medications. You don't see addiction in, the psychedelic industry, along with the fact you actually are eliminating addiction as that component, but it's changing, the pain loop. And so, and I also love equity, like in traditional pharmacy, making these surgeries or medications available across the board has always been a challenge. And it also hasn't been an important conversation as it could have been in the medical field. And because these medicines are coming from indigenous locations, and they're time-honored plants and, medicines, they're actually talking about equity, and that is beautiful. So my hope is we'll see that bleed into what we call modern day medicine and transforming it while also giving these incredible results.
And you're talking macrodosing, so that's within a medical space as opposed to the microdosing that is starting to become more and more talked about, where we can, as a personal consumer, go someplace and get medicinal remedies and dose ourselves. Unfortunately, I just had another question on my mind, but I know this is going to take too much of our space. Unfortunately, we're going to have to stop it here, Jodi. There's so many things I'd like to talk to you about. Would love to have you back on the show. Let's talk about what we as Canadians can grab from you at this point. Are you available in Canada?
We sure are. So you can go to greengoo.ca and find a handful of the majority of the Green Goo products available. And of course, we're also available on Amazon.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Jodi, thanks so much. It was a really great conversation. You're a wonderful guest, very good speaker. So happy that you could join us today.
It was a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on the Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on